Hello, boys and girls, ladies and gentlemen. This is Defub21, and today we have some new and exciting PS4k news. The highly reputable website, giantbomb.com, has a new article up which they've been able to reporting on rumors for the PS4k that they've been able to corroborate from multiple independent sources. So this sounds really good, and because from Giant Bomb, I'd say highly legit. I mean, this is all but effectively, from what I've read online, all but effectively confirming that this is it and that this is happening. First, the PS4k is being named and identified internally at Sony as Neo. Apparently, from October of this year, games are going to be required to have a base mode, which is to allow them to run and work properly on the PS4, and Neo mode. So any games that come out from October this year will have, if you buy the code Project Neo, aka PS4k, will be able to take advantage of the PS4k's capabilities. The second thing reported is that frame rates of games on Neo must be at least a match for those in the PS4. So in other words, it's not a situation of a developer can run a game on the Neo at 4K and run it at, say, 30 frames a second when the PS4 version of the game runs at 60 frames a second in quote-unquote base mode. Now, it has to at least match or surpass the standard PS4 for frame rate. Apparently, as well as this, most of this information seems to be very much about Sony doing anything and everything possible to prevent the user base being divided. So all games that come out for PS4k must, or Project Neo as they're calling it, must run on the PS4 as well. So there are no Neo-only games. They're just in other words, they're effectively multi-platform games. If a game is coming out on Neo, it has to come out on the PS4 as well. They're also, again, to prevent the user base from being divided, and particularly, I'd say, to avoid the user base of the PlayStation 4 from feeling like they've been ripped off or screwed over. There is no Neo exclusive gameplay options or unlockable content is banned, so there's no Neo exclusive gameplay options or unlockable content, but the Neo can have better versions or improved versions of features the standard PS4 version of the game has. So as an example, if a PS4 has a 4-player single screen co-op mode, the Neo can have an 8-player single screen co-op mode if it can support it. So something like that is allowed. It'll coexist with the PS4. It'll use the same operating system as the PS4, the same user accounts, and the same PlayStation Network. So if you've already got a PlayStation 4 and have a PlayStation Network account, that'll all run on the Neo. Games apparently that are released from late September onwards will be required to have a day one Neo mode patch. So even if they weren't necessarily developing for much of the development of the game, developing for it to run on Neo as well as standard PlayStation 4, from late September it must have a day one patch that gives it a Neo mode. Neo-ready games apparently will be released before, or may well be released before the Neo itself. In other words, just because the games that come out in October onwards, effectively from late September onwards, have to have a Neo mode and support the capabilities of the Neo, doesn't actually mean that the Neo will be released in that time. It might not be released in November or December, it might not even not be released this year. But again, we'll find out more at E3. Again, Neo mode patches will be allowed for all existing games. So if you've got an existing game for your PS4, it may well be, if the developer/publishers wishes to, may be retroactively patched to allow it to take advantage of the Neo's PS4K's additional capabilities, if it doesn't already. I don't think many third-party publishers and developers will do that, but I would be deeply, deeply surprised if both Uncharted and Bloodborne, both of which have come out before, obviously I'd say before work on the Neo began in full force, I'd be deeply surprised if those two key exclusive games aren't retroactively patched with Neo support. I'd be deeply shocked if that wasn't the case. In terms of, that's the kind of the general kind of gist of what they're reporting. There is, however, another piece of rather crucial, I'll just bring it up here, technical information. This is a comparison between the original PS4 and the Neo. The first is the processor. In the original PlayStation 4, the processor has, or the CPU core, or the APU, the accelerated processing unit, which is the core chip within the PlayStation 4, has 8 Jaguar CPU cores that are running at 1.6 gigahertz, which is 1600 megahertz. That's the speed at which they run at. The Neo uses the exact same Jaguar CPU cores, and it uses 8 of them, again just like the original PlayStation 4, but they are running at 2.1 gigahertz. That's 2100 megahertz. So it's a 500 megahertz or thereabouts difference in terms of processor frequency. That'll have an impact on performance. How big? I don't know, but it should be enough to make sure the CPU cores don't hold back the improved graphics capability of the Neo. On the graphics side of things, the original PlayStation 4 has an AMD GCN core, that's a graphics core next, with 8 compute units running at 800 megahertz. The Neo is running a improved AMD GCN, so various tweaks and improvements to the graphics core next that's found in the PlayStation 4, and crucially vitally, it has 36 compute units and is running at 911 megahertz. So in other words, this has, I think it is twice the compute unit capacity and capability that the PlayStation 4 has, which should have a very dramatic impact on performance. And finally, memory. In the PlayStation 4, you have 8 gigabytes of GDDR5 video RAM, which provides 176 gigabytes, that's 176,000 megabytes of main RAM bandwidth. In the Neo, you have 8 gigabytes of GDDR5 memory, but it provides 218 gigabytes of main RAM bandwidth. So in other words, it looks like the Neo is, rather than using completely new hardware, is instead a souped up version of the PlayStation 4. Same CPU core, same number of them running at a higher speed, an improved version of the graphics core within the AMD and within the APU found the PlayStation 4, with twice the compute capacity running at a slightly higher speed, and I think an advantage of about 40 gigabytes per second of additional main RAM bandwidth. Now, from what's been reported, the system doesn't, and again looking at these specs, I'd say the system would not be able to actually render a game unless it was a very kind of not very challenging one graphically at full 4K native resolution at 30 frames per second, let alone 60. But it probably would allow a game to be run at 1080p and upscaled to 4K, or it may be run at 2.5K, 2.5K. And then upscaled to full 4K. So, you know, it won't be a full-blooded native 4K system, but it will be a good bit more capable. And apparently, the Neo will be able to run the games it's running at 1080p. So if you buy a Neo and you've got a 1080p TV, you hook your Neo into your 1080p TV, and you will still be able to benefit from quote-unquote Neo mode. So I'd assume that'll mean better graphical effects, higher frame rates, and so on. So again, coming from Giant Bomb, this is, you know, extremely legit information. I know that this kind of hardware setup that's mentioned here, that's reported here, something like it was mentioned by Digital Foundry. I think I'll find the link to that article by Digital Foundry, and I'll put it in the description, as I will for the article from Giant Bomb. And one of the options for the PS4k that Digital Foundry mentioned was effectively this setup. Basically the core component of the PlayStation 4, components of the PlayStation 4 in a higher spec souped up form. They're probably taking advantage of more advanced chip manufacturing processes that allow them to squeeze more transistors onto a chip at the same size. Now, just what do I think on this? To be completely honest with you, it seems very clear that Sony is being extremely aggressive in preventing its install base from being segmented between the standard PlayStation 4 and the Neo. it says to me that Sony is being very aggressive in terms of what's the word to use, in terms of making sure that PS4 owners are not annoyed, antagonized, or pissed off in any way. They're making sure that there's, won't be any cool functionality in terms of gameplay that the standard PlayStation 4 won't have and that the Neo will. It says to me they're being, again, I'd say, considering the look of the specs, what the Neo apparently has, I'd say we're looking at $399 at launch. So, in other words, the price the PlayStation 4 launched at in 2013, I'd say we'll see a big price cut in the PS4, maybe by £100. I would certainly expect, as I said already, Uncharted and Bloodborne both to be retroactively patched to take advantage of Neo. I doubt the Uncharted 4 will have Neo support out of the box because I think it's supposed to be out this month. Looking at the specs, looking at what I've read, where effectively if you buy PlayStation 4 you're not going to get screwed over by the Neo. I'm still not likely to buy one, which I originally planned to do, to play Uncharted 4. I think I'll wait until we know more about the Neo itself and when it's coming out, and I'll wait and delay till that happens. But it is somewhat, confidence building, at least if Sony tries this and they pull it off. They're doing everything they can possible not to turn PlayStation 4 owners into second-class citizens, which is very good. And in terms of its capabilities, it looks like a relatively conservative upgrade of the existing tech. It certainly would make, guaranteed, be fully backward compatible with all existing games, and it would certainly for the PlayStation 4, and it would mean having, as a developer or a publisher, getting a game running properly on both systems wouldn't be too difficult or too expensive. It does kind of ask a few interesting questions for Nintendo with the NX, because if they're coming out, we're assuming they're announcing the NX at E3 this year, and we're assuming it's coming out this Christmas. I don't think they can leave it till next year. It'll have to compare to the PS4k in terms of capabilities, and if it's the same price and it's no more capable than the PS4k, and the 4K has already got this existing library of first and third party games, if I were Nintendo, I'd either need to have some really, really, really good first party games and exclusives at launch, they could have better hardware in the sense that they could go with a more, and again, as it said there in the specs, it's using an improved version of GCN, but it's not a completely new graphics chip architecture that might be a full generation ahead of what's used in the Xbox One, the PlayStation 4. Nintendo could go that route, which would have advantages. And of course, the single biggest weakness of the Xbox One, the PS4, isn't per se their graphics or the capabilities of their main RAM capacity or bandwidth. Their biggest single problem is their processors are underpowered, and the 500 megahertz boost to the Neo over the PlayStation 4 would certainly be welcome, but it's not enough to make a serious difference. And if Nintendo turns up with, look at our CPU cores, their desktop, they're running at 3.2 gigahertz and all the rest, that would certainly be very, very advantageous. Whether any third party would take advantage of them, either with special Nintendo versions of their multi-platform games, let alone with exclusives, I don't know. And it should be noted, Nintendo's own first-party content historically has not been that processor intensive at all in terms of physics, AI, and collision detection, so who knows what'll happen there. But yeah, interesting information to have. I think it'll definitely discourage me from buying a PlayStation 4 until I know more, and then either I'll get the Neo, or if the PlayStation 4 gets £100 slashed off its price and suddenly becomes, 150, like £200 or 250 for a PlayStation 4, that's a low risk buy for me, and I might go down that route. But anyway, this is Defub21. Let me know what you think in the comments on this. I really do want to know your thoughts on this. And if you like this video, please like it. And if you haven't already subscribed to my channel, please do so. Interesting times ahead. Toodaloo.